Hello and welcome to the Breathing Room. I'm Rita Gata, your host. I'm a wellness coach specializing in yoga and nutrition. We concentrate on three aspects called M&M: mind, nutrition, and movement. On this show, you will get practical information, all backed by science. So stay tuned. So I'm so happy today to introduce our guest, Nishta Bijlani. Nishta is a yoga teacher and a Nike trainer, and she has, there's a long intro. She has done her yoga from various places in the country, top reputed institutes, and she's been teaching for more than 10 years. She brings together people with her community, the teachers as well as the students, she specializes in different niche retreats. And we are lucky to have her today. She came to my yoga studio, and we did a arm balancing workshop, which was fantastic. And it was really good, Nishta, because, unless you get to the studio and are pushed to do these things, generally at home or you don't do it. So I was very happy, and it was a fantastic workshop. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be doing this and the workshop. It's always nice to come back to your studio. It's a lovely place you have here.
Thank you. So, okay, let's go to the beginning. So tell us about your yoga journey. How did it find you, or how did you find yoga?
I was never set out to do yoga. That's not what the plan or the career plan, so to say, was, I studied media, I studied advertising, and my direction was going to be exactly that, working in events, marketing. That's what I've done previously to yoga. It's only when I realized and I felt strongly that I've reached a threshold, which came thankfully very soon enough, that I cannot do that work life didn't work for me. It was too hectic. It was taking a toll on my health, is when I decided to quit. And I quit simply to quit without having any plan B, because I needed that space of mind to know what is calling me, where I need to be. And it's only after I left everything and I took some time by myself exploring various studies and subjects. So I even have, certified myself in counseling. And after that, I just very organically found myself in a yoga institute. It was just my mom telling me, there's an institute right near the house, why don't you go and check it out? So the journey started there, where I simply went to study yoga, simply to study, with no intention to become a teacher. And it's only when I found myself in the yoga school, I realized that I'm only beginning to understand life, or I'm only beginning to study. So it's like the doors of my mind opened, and there wasn't any looking back. I just decided to dive deep into the subject. Without having any expectations or where professionally I'm going to head. But just one thing led to another, and I find myself here today.
Wow. So I know that you're much more than asana. So I want to know how that shift took place from, just a physical practice to finding a little more spiritual and other practices.
Yeah. At the end of it, I think as a teacher also, I make it my responsibility to communicate with people and students around me that yoga is not for the body, even though you may come for that. It is for the mind, and it's a spiritual path. So even if the bodily practices and asana bring you to class, so be it. But as long as the teacher or the student is seeking a bit more, you will find yourself leading yourself into something which is beyond the mat and beyond asana. So even for myself, when I signed up, in the yoga course, in the beginning, I was simply drawn to the asana, and I thought, okay, this is just for the body, and so be it. And flexibility and movement came to me naturally. So that was my limited understanding of it. So I went with that, but only to realize that when I was exposed to the philosophy of yoga, the teachings, the concept, thankfully I've had some great teachers, because of whom I have this better and wider perspective of it, to realize that it's such a vast ocean of a subject, and I've still only, scratched the base of it and the surface of it. So when I realized that, okay, I've spent so much time in bodily practices, what next? I had the thing of wanting to, unlock a posture. Great, I've got that. Now what? So when that started to lead me to the now what and what am I still seeking, I started to realize that all of that movement has been preparing me for stillness. All of that effort has been preparing me to come into an effortless state where I'm not seeking or chasing anymore, and I'm finding that contentment within, and that is me discovering the state of yoga within. So that transition started to happen, and I have to say that's the physical practice that got me to feel the need for more in the yoga beyond the mat.
Yeah, so, and I think as yoga seekers, we're always seekers.
Yeah.
You know, you never think you know enough.
Absolutely.
And we don't.
We don't.
Because yoga is like you said, an
It's a
ocean.
vast- yeah.
An ocean. But was it, anything in class that got you there? Or was it just on your own? You just decided like...
I think it was, first spending enough time with what was drawing me, which was the physicality of it, only to then realize, I think it has to be a lived experience. It's not like I didn't know that there is more. I knew that even before, but I was drawn to something which was very surface. So I allowed myself to fully experience that. Only then that natural shift could happen. Otherwise I'm just forcing myself into something I'm not ready for. I had to get ready for it.
Yes.
And it's only when I was ready for it, the right teachers appeared. I was ready to be that student who was ready to study yoga in that level of depth. So it was such a gradual shift. And even today, whether they're students I'm talking to or yoga teachers I'm talking to, I always do say, if you have that need for physicality and asana, and even I practice asana very much, but the approach with which I'm practicing today versus what it used to be has changed a lot. It's not achievement based. It's not about I have to make it happen, otherwise I'm not a good teacher or whatever. So the approach is simply to come, allow my body to move and gain the insights from the experience. The end result is not what I'm going for. So that approach has changed. So I do encourage the students and teachers to also allow themselves to see a little bit beyond them. Okay, you've got the handstand, the headstand, then what? Where is it taking you then?
Yeah,
Is the movement taking you to stillness, or it's further entangling you into bodily attachment and further entangling you into just how good or your body can be or cannot be? So, it's that questioning. If that inquiry begins, you're on the right path.
Yeah, that's a really, like how you say, then what? But what about the ego? What if you could, the constant struggle to get into those poses?
Yeah.
How do you address that?
So it reminds me of this one moment when I was in one of my teacher trainings and we were doing our practices and they were very physically intensive and challenging. And I remember kind of falling out of it and my teacher passing by and saying that, good, keep falling and keep your ego in check. So realizing that just because, you may feel like you're good with your body, you can achieve these postures, but every now and then when you fall out, it's not about shit, I can't do it, or oh my God, I can't do it, so and so can do it. It's reminding you to kind of, practice with humility, practice with kindness with your body. So that's where your yogic insights and learnings are coming about in the mat. So hence I do say, like, find the yoga in the practice. Using the posture as the yoga, it is not. It is these learnings that you are taking with you is what will take you beyond. If you simply leave a class and said, I cracked that posture, I can do good yoga, I'm a good yoga practitioner, then you still haven't learned anything.
Right.
Whereas when you're learning, like they say, right, it's a quote by one of the teachers who say it's not about touching your toes, it's the journey towards that.
Yeah.
That is yoga. So it's the same thing. What are the insights that you're learning from? Your ego showing up time to time, getting bruised time to time is important because it's preparing you for life, isn't it? So that is what the mat practice is also teaching you. And then you take from that and you apply it in your life and you keep revisiting and reapproaching your practice.
You have to learn from her. No, because I have learned from really hardcore teachers and sometimes it's too much. But I just love the way you did the progression today and it allowed us to be still in between, play. So it's all very important. It's a very refreshing way. So what do you think about social media and how it's changed the face of yoga in India, especially? I mean, this, started in the West with wearing, Lululemons and halter tops or whatever, and doing poses, and that was yoga. And do you feel that slowly that's coming to India or already has come to India? And what's your thoughts on that?
Yes, already in India. And I think there isn't a problem with it. I think it's okay if I understand the brands and the fancy yoga pants are probably bringing people to class. So be it. At the end of it, if you find yourself with a good teacher, all of this won't matter. So you will be able to see beyond that, because even if this is the surface or the outer appearances is what is drawing people, so be it. And I think social media being on the rise when it comes to yoga is a great thing. It's not a problem. Again, at the end of it, as a person who's viewing it, it ends up being on them how they eventually find themselves filtering what they're consuming. Because there will always be all kinds of people. So at the end of it, if yoga is being talked about, it's a great thing. The younger generation is finding themselves into the practice, into the studios, into the classes, speaking about yoga, choosing to do yoga as a community, going with friends for a yoga
Yeah.
class. I
Yeah.
think that's very nice and refreshing to see over the years. I've seen that shift earlier because it's always been seen as, okay, yoga for the elderly. Are you old? Why are you doing yoga? Why aren't you like going to the gym? Why aren't you strengthening, etc.? So the approach and the mindset has begun to shift, where even the younger generation is choosing to prioritize their mental health, their emotional health, and recognizing that yoga is contributing to that. So I think people are also choosing it for the right reasons, not just for what it appears to be on the outside because of the projection of the West, maybe. So I still see that if a person is genuinely seeking, irrespective of all that comes their way on social media, they'll still be able to find themselves
They'll find their
filtering
way.
it
Yeah.
and maybe going to a few classes that don't work, few teachers that don't work, but eventually it will lead to where they have been wanting to reach.
Yeah, as long as they keep going,
Correct.
keep at it.
Yeah.
Do you think we're losing some traditional roots in that aspect?
I guess there's a bit of both. And I feel that while there is a lot of, let's say, fads and trends coming about, like we see very interesting adaptations today, such as bear yoga or goat yoga and whatnot. It is coming from the West. I do see that happening in India as well. I have been approached for similar classes and workshops, and it's ridiculous. I laugh, but of course, I don't take it up because just because it's popular for the moment doesn't mean that's something I need to give into. It is happening, and there, because maybe it's just brands choosing to capitalize on yoga. But again, I think there are people who have better judgment and who understand and see it for what it is. So there will be those who will go for it because for them it's just a one-time thing, and for there'll be those who understand better. While I say that, I also see that there are teachers and students who are staying rooted in the traditional. They are choosing the traditional. So you may choose this route and eventually find yourself, or you may have better judgment from before and directly choose something which is more rooted and traditional. At the end of it, I think the onus kind of lies on the person who's seeking it. And if I see futuristically where I see this going, I think there's going to be always two parallels working. There will be those who are probably always trying to come up with new ways of packaging yoga, new ways of just
Commercializing,
correct,
basically,
just marketing it differently and putting it out differently. But yoga is the same old, and it will continue to remain the same old, and that is the beauty of yoga, because it's so ancient, because it's so rooted, and it is old and repeated. That is the beauty of it. It does not need to be marketed. It does not need to be sold because it has
Already
already
there, yes.
existed
It's there.
since centuries, right? So who are we to come and try to capitalize on it? But there will always. So I think the two parallels will continue to exist. But again, at the end of it, I see a lot of people asking the right questions. Asking the right questions that need to be asked, but why am I doing this? But where is the tradition in it? Where is the rootedness in it? Where is it coming from? What are the origins? So there are also those who are upholding, the roots of the practice.
Right.
Yeah.
So, one of the reasons people have to spin it or like make different types of workshops or whatever is to make a living. And there's so many more teachers now because of this TTCs, the teacher training. And so someone does a teacher training and, to spin yoga in a different way, like this goat yoga or beer yoga, that is not very popular in India. It's there, but it's not going to sell. But they have to do something different to yoga space. What do you think about the TTCs that are coming out right now? Or do you think it's too many teachers? Do you think it's a very touchy subject for all yoga teachers, but it's something that has to be addressed. I think the quality has to be addressed.
Right. I guess, that's the trade-off sometimes when something is becoming popular. If there are brands and companies that want to capitalize on yoga, we have a day dedicated to yoga thanks to our Prime Minister. So it's only natural for people to be drawn to it. And it's a funny thing, one of my teachers says that, everybody wants to be a teacher, but nobody wants to be a student. You see? So it does happen. So even when a person is getting drawn to the subject, they would find a way to still monetize and capitalize on it by, okay, let me sign up for TTC, I'll pay this big fee for the certificate, and then I can monetize and teach. Now, I feel, TTCs exist, they will continue to exist, because why not? The learning should be imparted. Even, and if that means it's happening through the format of a certification course, because it kind of makes a person feel they have something, that piece of paper has some value to it after I've finished my course. But to be honest, you can still study without having to make it a profession, right? But I feel the person involved sooner or later realizes that, well, this was just a subject of interest and I would like to pursue it simply for that, or I do have it in me to teach and I can do it. I feel sooner or later it does happen, because when I'm conducting programs for yoga teachers, while I'm teaching them how to move forward in their path of yoga as well as the career aspect of yoga, I do tell them, at any point in life, if you feel that I am, not able to make it into a successful profession, respect the fact that you haven't lost out on anything, because you still have yoga with you, and it's a gift that keeps giving. You simply have that with you. You don't have to think that I have to simply monetize just because I paid so much money to study it. You still received it, and it can, a lifetime will be less to go into the depth of the subject. So I guess while there are many yoga teachers on the rise, and in the pandemic we saw that there were endless number of TTCs online being conducted, probably even irresponsibly, just simply to make it a commercial thing by the schools, just simply belting out, month after month, 50, 60 students, whether they are actually, who have even deserved to, reach there or not. It had become, I think, quite a commercial gimmick on the end of a lot of schools. But sooner or later, at the end of it, what happens, right? The person with that certificate has to take it forward. Nobody can handhold them and take it into, a successful career or not. So I guess till you don't really feel passionate about the subject and feel like it's a calling, and you have it in you to really go through the process of continuing to be a student, as a result of which you can continue to be a good teacher. If that doesn't continue, the right intention isn't there, sooner or later the person realizes it.
Right. No, I like the advice you gave, because yoga teaching is about experience. So you just have to, keep at it. And if you're going to shine, you'll shine. And if not, you realize that in the end, absolutely nothing is lost.
Correct.
Everybody should do a TTC.
Yes. Yeah, right. Because you get to study the subject.
And studying anything. Just not just yoga, but investing in any type of course is not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So just treat it as that. So I liked your answer. And in general, what are the misconceptions people have about yoga? If somebody, especially who doesn't know anything, like when before you started, if you have someone like you coming in, any misconceptions that they have?
Yeah, to look at it from a very myopic view, which would be, okay, yoga is just for flexibility, it is just for women, or sometimes, it's not even for younger adults, it's for much older people, it's so boring and monotonous. So those have been the most generic, I may say, layman misconceptions, where because the only idea of yoga for a person has simply been what you do on the mat. Even today, when people talk about it, they'd say, oh, I don't do yoga, but I meditate. But meditation is yoga. But that is something most of them do not even know. So it's one of the limbs of yoga, just like asanas is one of the limbs of yoga. Similarly, meditation is one of the limbs. Pranayama is one of the limbs. Yoga is not limited to asanas. So that understanding is lacking. And when a person is choosing to kind of dive deeper in the subject and understand this whole picture, you realize, oh, I am doing the asanas for my body, but that is only helping me, preparing me for the fuller aspect of being able to be comfortable with myself, to inquire within, to sit in my stillness, to, check on my breath, to be with myself in awareness. So today we have fancier terms such as mindfulness, all of that. But what does that mean? That has always existed. It's just that there's a term today.
Different name for it, yeah.
The state of yoga is mindfulness.
Yes.
So I guess just that myopic, short-sighted view has been the biggest misconception of yoga, and it somehow just continues.
Yeah. Yes. Hopefully it's getting
better, yeah.
Getting better. Getting more people on the mat helps. Yeah. And, we talked about the yoga teachers. You're a successful teacher, entrepreneur, how it's not easy to make a living doing yoga, just yoga. So can you give us how did you do it? Like what are your recommendations or your journey in that process?
Right. Honestly, yeah. I feel that obviously it's going to be different for every teacher. If I look back and see what worked for me was simply an unexplainable passion or calling that kept me at it. I also started at a very young age in my early, like I was just 21, where it wasn't that I am simply teaching because I have to make the income and I have to survive on it. I didn't have a rent to pay. So I was fortunate on that aspect. So I could allow myself time to simply grow without constantly seeking the monetary benefits. And when you give yourself that time to grow, you see that, your passion and your calling is driving you to have a bigger reach. So, I mean, now I realize that there is a potential. One, that when I started from then to now, there is a much larger audience today who are very receptive, very open. And I think pandemic has a big role to play here, because that opened up the online world to us. I could have never imagined teaching yoga virtually.
Yeah.
And it is just like, I still think about it, and now it's been since 2020, when 25, I'm still teaching online, and I see that students haven't dropped out. They still like it, and still they have the convenience. So they have become better students because they know that I can still take what I need to take from my teacher, even if it's on this platform. So that has changed. So that has also added to the professional gains of a yoga teacher, the online world, because you're able to reach out to a much larger audience. As a result of which, people world over around the country have become a lot more receptive to just yoga, health, wellness, and taking care of themselves. That period of the pandemic, which got everybody to reprioritize their, health and what actually matters rather than simply running. That gave the health industry a big boom. That gave yoga teachers, yoga, Ayurveda, the natural healing modalities in the country a big boom. So that has been a big aspect. And with me, since I've started, other than just teaching students, whether it's one-on-one or a bunch of students, I've started to see that a lot of them are very receptive as well to venture out of their homes, show up for residential programs such as retreats and week-long, 10-day-long programs where they're ready to sign up, and they may not have any background of it. They may be corporate people. Right?
Really? So they don't. Okay, these are not yoga
teachers necessarily.
Teachers or practitioners.
Yes, those who are very new to it, but they're very open to the idea of venturing out and signing up for something that requires a week of their commitment or longer.
That's fantastic.
And get out of their comfort zone, get out of their cities, leave their work. That's also because people are maybe choosing to travel with a purpose. So if I can go for a holiday for 10 days and just spend a lot of my money, instead, why don't I choose to go somewhere which allows me to experience a new place, a community of people, because this allows them to even travel alone without knowing anybody. So because they're going to meet a bunch of people who've come for the same reason, so like-minded community, and they're getting to learn, they're getting to experience something they haven't, and they're only benefiting themselves. So they have so much of a takeaway from that program. So people are choosing to consciously travel, consciously move around. And this has also, in my personal journey, added to, the retreats that I'm talking about, yoga retreats. So people are really choosing to come for that. And I think as a result of these various aspects, be it online, the retreats, coming together, leaving their homes, pandemic making people realize how much, they need to prioritize their health, has added to a yoga teacher's professional journey a lot more. It's not simply doing yoga in the park anymore.
Right.
It is taking yoga to so many places. So teachers have started to explore that, including myself, and people around are very receptive to it. So that's
very good news. People need to get out. And I think people are done with just going to a place and sitting on a beach or seeing place to place monuments or whatever.
With a purpose,
traveling with a purpose.
Spiritually evolving yourself, choosing to learn, choosing to do things differently. I think people are becoming more conscious about that.
So this midlife crisis, people, men and women, they want to buy a new car or they have an affair or whatever it is. The new midlife crisis is they want to learn something and they spend money on it.
Yeah.
So they, go somewhere for a retreat or even longer.
Yeah.
And so I guess
Yes,
it's a good thing.
It's a better way to handle the midlife crisis.
Yeah. And something you said in your classes is this is the real yoga. So I really like that. Because it is the real yoga. It's not the asana. So can you just explain that in how you explain in your class a little more in detail about that?
I mean, so it's, like sometimes when I get inquiries, people want to sign up for class. So they would tell me, okay, my purpose is I just want to lose weight. Okay, my purpose is I just want to learn the headstand. I just want to learn how to be flexible or get into the split. I said, why would you come with such a small goal? Why would you come with such a small purpose?
I love that. Yeah.
Right? Because that's just simply a byproduct of you showing up. But why can't you ask me, I want to learn yoga, I want to know more, then we can talk. So when that happens and they come with like the requests which are very posture driven, and I let them know that sure, we will be covering postures, we will move our body, we will do all of that, but that is not the yoga. Getting a posture, not getting a posture is simply a byproduct of your consistency. If you show up today, your body knows something, tomorrow it doesn't know, and today if you don't know it, you simply unlock that posture because of all the techniques and methods that you put into it. So what's the big deal? That's happening in so many movement modalities, whether you're doing strength training or whether you're doing gymnastics, calisthenics, whatever. So you do a movement repeatedly, your body learns. So what's the big deal in that? But where is the yoga, and how does one differentiate that with yoga with any other form of movement? So I said that learning that takes place on the mat, where whether you're doing it, not doing it, whether the way you approach the practice, the state of mind that you come with, the tiny key learnings and insights that you receive in the practice, where you have a moment to realize, oh my God, why am I pushing myself? Why am I comparing with somebody else on the mat? Why am I competing? All those little tiny learnings, that's where yoga is happening. It's like I do say in my class, your mat is simply a mirror, a reflection of the way you lead your life. As a teacher, I love to observe in my class, there are people, I see all kinds of personalities show up when they're practicing. So I have put out the same techniques, the same methods, the same preparation for what we're supposed to do in class. But every person approaches it differently. And that difference is coming with the way they are leading their life. So whereas I see one person who gives up really easily, there's one person who's pushing in spite of being told, relax and sit down a bit, So that just shows the way they are leading their own life. Probably the same traits are showing up in the way they approach all life situations. So if you become aware of that why am I pushing my body to the point of punishing it? Why am I being so laid back? Why am I giving up so easily? I haven't even tried it. Just by simply looking at people around me, I'm already demotivated. So where is that coming from? If we are able to be aware of that learning is so key, because then you can make the same shift in your life. And that's why yoga extends beyond the mat in life as well. So if you can't fix that in life situations, you've found that and you've spotted that on the mat in your practice. And here you shift it translates into life as well.
Yeah.
So that's the yoga.
Yeah. So as a yoga teacher, I know that. But all the beginners or even just regular practitioners don't know that.
Yeah.
But the fact that you emphasized it was fantastic. I like that. Yeah. So somebody has 30 minutes a day. What do you recommend? What kind of practice do you recommend?
So I feel I do say this to students and teachers as well, that you need to define your understanding of what practice means. So what does practice mean to you? Does it mean if your requirement, whether for that day, for the week or for the month, is movement, then you can come and do a short asana practice, which could involve gentle warm-up, Surya Namaskars, moving your body, your spine, etc., and giving it the necessary circulation. Whereas if your requirement is mental health, you just require some calmness, you require to reset your nervous system, you can choose to just work with breath awareness, gentle movement, restorative practices, and meditation. So I guess it depends for a person to identify or define what practice means to them, as a result of which, if you have 30 minutes, you can choose what to do. So over these many years, my idea and definition of practice has changed. My personal, the requirement of what I need in that point in life. So whereas if I would practice for maybe 2 hours back in the day, and I would need that 2-hour practice, thankfully, now I do not. And the lesser the practice is because I'm not dependent on it so much. 30 minutes is enough for me to survive the
You're not
entire
dependent
day.
on the physical aspect.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I could simply move my body. So my dependency on the asana practice has reduced greatly, and I can just come, move my body for a couple of minutes, 15, 20 minutes or so, and then just spend the rest of my time enjoying my stillness. So I don't need to depend on my body to give me that. Whereas when I started off, I needed the body to drive me. So the shift from gross to subtle happens. So I guess as a person on their path, they need to kind of understand and define practice and what it means for them. So then they can dedicate the 30 minutes accordingly.
Do you need, as a yoga teacher, do you need to show the poses? I'm asking this because I asked you this a little earlier when you said, nobody was born doing crow pose. You have to work at it. But what if you cannot? If you've done it and then you've had an injury and you cannot go back to that injury, you cannot go back to those poses. What is your advice to yoga teachers or for that?
Right. I mean, firstly, I think just getting the clarity as to what is even the purpose of what you're doing, right? If initially I was, say, driven by postures, for me, I would want to do it. And I've not had an injury. So my body is healthy and capable of putting myself through an intense practice or a stronger regime, so be it. Now, if I've had an injury or if I've had any kind of limitation to my body, health issues, whatever, I will have to modify and tweak as per the requirement. Just because I can't do a set posture doesn't mean practice isn't happening. I can move around my injury and I can move around my body's condition all the time I am in life. I could be going through a phase where maybe that wasn't working. So I will need to modify and understand that that wasn't making much of a difference. The fact that I can simply connect with my body is what is more important. So even if and it will always happen, right? The body, even though yoga keeps you youthful in many ways, but it is still aging, and as you grow older your practice will need to be modified. I do not have to have an attachment to a particular posture and feel terrible about myself that, oh, I could do handstands and I can't do it anymore. I could do handstands, I enjoyed it while it lasted, and now I'm in a different phase of life and I'm enjoying where I am right now because it stayed with me while it could, but I don't have to be attached to it. My body is still functional, right, and I'm very grateful for that. So
I need to be reminded of that often. Before I got married, a relative kept on telling me, you have to just remember this before, as you go on in life. Adjustment is life. Life is adjustment.
So beautiful.
Yeah. I still remember those words.
Yes.
Yeah. Because, coming from, I had a lot of adjustment to do.
Right.
So, what are the key yogic philosophies that you follow? Anything you tell in class or you follow on your own? Any specific? Or do you follow the Bhagavad Gita? Spiritually? What is the progression that you've had?
I think if I have to just without even holding any text or scripture in perspective, just the meaning of yoga has evolved for me greatly over the years, and I think just spending time just gives you perspective, because one thing is to learn something as a scriptural study, which is great, which is imparted by a teacher, you have an interpretation, but one thing is to actually have it as a lived experience, rather than being told. So living through that shift of what yoga has meant to me has been something I kind of, keep reflecting on. For example, just a simple surface level understanding of what yoga used to be and how we would be simply in the beginning taught yoga is union, mind, body, soul connection. While that isn't incorrect, but to really understand what it means, before you understand it as a union, you understand it as a separation. This is again that came to me in the recent few years with, because you're experiencing life and your yogic journey, choosing to do it with a bunch of teachers, at every phase of life you experience different teachers. So this was this one teacher and we were studying Sankhya Darshan, and through the studies of Sankhya Darshan, I came to understand how yoga, before it can be understood as a union, is actually to be looked at as separation. And it really made me ponder over it, think, what do you even really mean by it? But it's about understanding that the nature of universe is duality. We are living in a dual universe. So there's darkness, there's light, there's love, there's hate, there's masculine, there's feminine. Everything is dual forces. So till we do not recognize the duality of everything, how do you understand that they are one? It's very easy to say we are all one, you and me one, coming from the same source one, we're all a collective. But when it comes to anything that's a trigger or a conflict, we're the first to separate. So till we do not understand yoga as well as a separation, because it's like Atman to Paramatman. So we are one, right? But till you do not understand the separation, how does one understand the union? So to live through the duality of nature, to recognize it for what it is, to then slowly understand it's the duality that will actually take you towards union, was an understanding of yoga that has evolved for me over the years.
That's very interesting. I've not thought of it that way,
Right.
but. So I think, Nishta, any last thoughts? Anything you'd like to tell the audience?
I mean, after having said so much, it's like...
No, but everything you've said is very relevant and, just flowed really well. I mean, in like steps
Right.
that we talked about, and, everything was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, if I just have to leave with any parting thoughts, I'd say that people do sit on the edge when it comes to yoga and have many misconceptions of what they can do. I'm not a good practitioner. I feel that you realize sooner or later, or if you spend some time with it, that it is beyond a movement modality. It is a way of living. So yoga applies in the smaller things that you do, the way you talk to people, the interpersonal relationships, the lifestyle that you choose to live, the food that you consume, the conversations and the company of people that you consume. You'll find yourself living life through yoga. So it's beyond that just that 1 hour on the mat. So it's so beautiful to grow in life through yoga, and I would love for people to want to experience that. So if that little spark or the seed is in you, you must choose to water it. And you must choose to go on with it, because you can chance upon some amazing people that you meet through the community, some amazing teachers, each of whom will have something to offer. And it is absolutely the most natural way of living, to be in tune with nature is what you will discover. So people who always find themselves on the edge with yoga should definitely venture into it to discover a little bit more than what lies on the mat.
Okay. But first, get on the mat. And
then
stay on the mat. Yes.
Yeah, let it take you forward from there. Yeah.
So, and where can people find you, Nishta?
So I do conduct a lot of virtual programs. So I exist online. I have a bunch of offerings.
You're on Instagram.
Correct.
Nishta
Nishta Vijlani is my Instagram
I'll
handle.
put everything on the show notes, but
Yeah, so all my updates do come on that time to time. And yes, and so online, that means you can be in any time zone and you can choose to practice. And I also do retreats all around the country. So again, you can choose to practice with me in person. So yeah, social media, Instagram is where I usually have all my stuff.
Fantastic. So if you are in Pune, you come to the breathing room. If you want to do something online, you'll find out where in the show notes. So thanks again, and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lovely conversation. Thank you.